Immigration Minister John McCallum was in Vancouver yesterday discussing his most recent trip to China, and he outlined the goals of the trip.
I recently came back from a visit to Beijing and Hong Kong and Manila in the Philippines. China is number one for temporary visitors, mainly tourists, and that was actually the main purpose of my trip to China, because our government, under the leadership of Justin Trudeau, has said we want to broaden and deepen our ties with China. Chinese government has agreed.
Which doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Do you remember this?
Their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime and say we need to go green as fast as we need to start investing in solar.
McCallum was talking specifically about tourism, which isn't contentious. Of course, we love tourists, and individual Chinese people are always welcome to come here and spend their money. But McCallum refused to address the serious issues with China. Just watch how he shrugged off my questions about organ harvesting.
Minister Christopher Wilson, Rebel Media. I'm curious if before your trip to China you had a chance to read your former caucus colleague David Kilgore's report, an update on his original Mattis Kilgore report on the organ harvesting that's going on in China?
No, I didn't.
Well, the new estimate suggests it could be 60,000 to 100,000 transplants per year going on in China now, and this is his report that's been published. And I'm curious if you had a chance to possibly raise this issue with some of your Chinese counterparts over when you're on this trip. And if not, would your government consider following the lead of Israel and Spain in banning Canadian citizens from traveling to China for organ transplants?
I have not read that document, and it was not discussed in my visit to China.
But would your government look to possibly banning Canadian citizens from traveling to China for...
We will look at the situation. I can't comment before informing myself of that situation.
Fair enough. He's only the immigration minister after all, but it's no secret that China has a terrible human rights record when it comes to their treatment of minorities and allowing freedom of conscience. And McCallum kept saying he wanted to deepen relations with this communist dictatorship. So I pushed him again. Sure, it was just about tourism, but what about Canadians who are skeptical and don't exactly want to cozy up with communist China?
Minister, if you please, you've said a number of times you're seeking closer ties. To Canadians that are maybe skeptical of the Chinese regime and their human rights abuses, what would you say to comfort those fears?
Well, I would say that to have closer relations with a country doesn't mean that one agrees with that country on everything. So I think there is scope for closer ties. We have a long history of good relations with China, starting from Norman Bethune, going on to Pierre Trudeau, early recognition. And those close ties have been developed over our history. It does not mean that we agree on everything. You don't agree on everything with your best friend or your wife or your husband. You sometimes disagree.
Wait, did you catch that part in the middle? Let me play it for you again.
We have a long history of good relations with China, starting from Norman Bethune, going on to Pierre Trudeau.
So he's taking his cues from the man who left Canada to fight with the Chinese Communist Party. Are you serious? And then he really wanted to let me know this is best for the economy.
Chinese tourists, let me get you the figure. They spend I want to get the number right. Chinese tourists spend $392 billion. 292. What did I say? Sorry, $292 billion of Chinese tourist expenditures in 2015.
And we can turn a blind eye to everything else, human rights abuses included, because the economy? Well, I guess that's right, unless it's the oil sands.
There's a level of admiration I actually have for China, because their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime and say we need to go green as fast as we need to start investing in solar. I mean, there is a flexibility that I know Stephen Harper must dream about, of having a dictatorship that he could do everything he wanted.
Right. For the Rebel.media, I'm Christopher Wilson.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of The Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.